Hi everyone, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt, an independent political talk show that seeks to bring a different narrative than the stale one we have going on right now in the mainstream media. So today we're going to be talking about fake news, because that's what the mainstream media seems to be going on about. You see it on CNN, you see it on MSNBC, occasionally on Fox. It's really big in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Now, the Washington Post recently did an article where they began to list a bunch of news sites that they called their fake news. It was pure McCarthyism at best. And it just goes to show you how much the mainstream media is basically on its last leg. They've lost all credibility in this election, which is their own fault. Any person who was staring at this election objectively could have told you that Donald Trump was going to win. And alternative news organizations on YouTube, as well as independent media sites online, called it accurately and said Hillary Clinton didn't have the support that they thought she had, and the polls were wrong. And unfortunately, they portrayed a picture that wasn't true, blew their own credibility. Their objectivity, which journalists are supposed to have, was thrown out the window as well, and they started writing hit pieces on people. So we're going to talk about this because there's just so much to get into, so let's just get right into it. What this election has showed us is that the mainstream media got it wrong. They were completely wrong. From the left and the right, they were under the impression that the same patterns that happened in 2012 were going to happen in 2016. They were also under the impression that many Americans wanted to break the glass ceiling with Hillary Clinton and just disregard many things that she has done and the corruption that was just so blatant with her. A lot of people in the mainstream media felt that instead of reporting objectively and reporting on the issues, that it was their mission to personally stop Donald Trump. And unfortunately, they blew what little credibility they have left. So instead of the mainstream media taking responsibility and doing their mea culpa and understanding that, our political biases got in the way, we weren't objective, we didn't tell the facts, we messed up, and possibly explaining that to the American people and maybe getting more people to believe what they're watching, they're doubling down on the same lies and the same nonsense that was blowing their credibility in the first place. Now, what we've seen from the mainstream media now, from the CNN, from the MSNBCs, from the Fox News, the Washington Post, the New York Times, you've seen this Slate and BuzzFeed and Huffington Post as well. They're saying that it was fake news and it was Russian propaganda that tipped the election to Donald Trump. It wasn't Hillary Clinton's shady behavior. It wasn't the mainstream media clearly in the tank for her. It wasn't any of this. It was Russian propaganda. Now, this is one of the most cynical aspects and the most disgusting things that I have seen is they're doubling down on this rhetoric. Now, the more and more that they continue to push this fake news narrative, the more and more people will just tune out. Because you can't call something fake news because it doesn't fit your narrative. They're saying that these online news sites, these alternative news sites, are basically feeding Russian propaganda. They're basically lying. They're not telling the truth. That the mainstream media, the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the Fox News, they are the gatekeepers of what is true. They are the people that we are supposed to trust. These are the same people who are pushing the Iraq war. You see Fox News doing this bullshit every day, pushing, oh well, Bashar al-Assad, the butcher, is killing everyone in Aleppo and we have to go do something. I mean, these are the same people who were doing this with the Iraq war, who were doing this with Libya, who were doing this with Ukraine. They weren't telling people the truth during the election, but now we're supposed to believe you when you say it's these fake news sites that tipped this election for Hillary Clinton. If they had a track record of telling the truth, okay, maybe then I could say, okay, maybe I can go out on a limb and say, maybe these news organizations are fake news. But every single time you label these organizations fake or these are Russian propaganda, it's just going to get more traction. People are going to want to see what they're talking about. So they're just blowing their own credibility more. It defeats the purpose because you can't win like that. In the age of information where we have technology at the touch of our hands, we don't have to listen to you. We can tune you out. And this is exactly what's happening. So the Washington Post recently wrote an article, a very disgraceful, disgusting, McCarthyite article, where they proceeded to label many conservative news organizations, news outlets, as Russian propaganda, as well as many news organizations that were critical of US foreign policy as part of the Russian disinformation campaign. And this goes to show you how deep this level of thinking is with the people in our media elite, how they will refuse to understand why they lost and why the American people is continuing to tune out this sort of nonsense. So a reporter by the name of Craig Timberg for the Washington Post, he had titled the article as Russian propaganda effort helped spread fake news during the election, experts say. He cited a report by an anonymous website calling itself Prop or Not, which claims that millions of Americans have been deceived this year in a massive Russian misinformation campaign. Now, we've seen Hillary Clinton as well as the Democratic Party try this during the election, seeing that the Russians were infiltrating our elections, that they were hacking our elections, that they were trying to tip the election in Donald Trump's favor. That did not work out too well for her. She lost partly because of that nonsense as well. And we see in Germany Angela Merkel trying the same thing. We'll see how that works out for her. But to say that it was Russian propaganda that helped tip the election is just the biggest fallacy I've ever seen. So, the group list of Russian disinformation outlets include WikiLeaks. It includes the conservative website Drudge Report, as well as left-leaning websites that are critical of Hillary Clinton, such as Truthout, Black Agenda Report, Truthdig, and Naked Capitalism, as well as some libertarian websites as well, such as antiwar.com and the Ron Paul Institute. The Post was one of the most widely circulated political news articles on social media over the last few days, and many US journalists as well as political pundits, they were saying it was earth-shattering and it was brilliant. They were exposing all the Russian news outlets that were infiltrating our media that helped tip the election in Donald Trump's favor. And it became their most read news article the Friday it was posted. The Washington Post named the group behind the website Prop or Not as experts. The Post described Prop or Not simply as a nonpartisan collection of researchers with foreign policy, military, and technology backgrounds. Not one individual at the organization is named. The executive director is quoted, but only on the condition of anonymity, which the Post said it was providing the group to avoid being targeted by Russia's legion of skilled hackers. Now, this brings me to my point. Why would the Washington Post write an article where you can't name anyone from the organization, Prop or Not? They have a very dubious background, but we're supposed to automatically believe, under anonymity, these people are saying things, mind you, that every news organization that they are listing are Russian propaganda, where you can't check these sources, you can't check any of these people's backgrounds, you can't know their history, or maybe they're just saying things just to say it. So why would a news publication, which has a history of winning Pulitzer Prizes, run something like this and then expect the American people to believe it? Now what you have is a situation where this group, Prop or Not, it looks newly created for all intents and purposes. It just popped out of nowhere, publicly branding journalists as well as alternative news outlets as Russian propaganda, and they're even calling on the FBI to investigate these people for espionage. And it's extremely cowardly and disgusting because these people wouldn't even go on record to say who they were because they were afraid that Russian trolls were going to hack into their website. But it's okay to start to start publicly naming news organizations as well as journalists tools of the Kremlin. That's okay though. That's allowed. Now, the author of the article for the Washington Post did not include a link to Proper Not's website, but I will have a link to their website so you can check it out for yourself. But when you go on there, you can clearly see a certain theme and a pattern with them, that they are peddling propagandist cliches, that they are pushing a NATO narrative about the world, and that they're engaging in extremely dubious McCarthyite tactics about a wide range of critics and people who aren't falling with basically the NATO line. And this is what these people were posting on Twitter. It's very childish. It says, "We'll consider revealing our names when Russia reveals the names of those running its propaganda operations and the rest. Fascists, straight up motherfucking fascists. That's what we're up against. Unwitting or not, they're working for Russia." And look at all angry Putin is trying to change the subject. They're so very angry, it's cute. We don't censor, just highlight. And this is an organization that the Washington Post felt was credible enough for them to cite from, to claim that organizations, conservative as well as liberal, were Russian propaganda outlets. This is how they conduct themselves online. And this didn't start with the Washington Post, but they are the culmination of what has been happening. This started last week with a list by an assistant professor from Merrimack College by the name of Melissa Zamdar. She created a list of so-called fake news, and it went viral online. Now, Melissa Zimdars is a 30-year-old. She's identified as a feminist, well, self-identified as a feminist activist, and she has expressed her great dislike for President-elect Donald Trump as well as Vice President-elect Mike Pence. Some of the sites she lists are credible and well-established news organizations such as Breitbart, Bisback Review, Red State, The Blaze, Independent Journal Review, Twitchy, The Daily Wire, WMD, and James O'Keefe's Project Veritas. Now, if you notice, many of these websites have a very conservative slant to them, and mainstream media, like it always does, picked up on her list. The Los Angeles Times circulated Zimdar's list. The Times headlined their article, "Want to keep fake news out of your news feed? College professor creates a list of sites to avoid." The Times offered no details concerning Zimdar's qualifications or background. News organizations such as CNN, The Washington Post, The Boston Globe, The New York Magazine, USA Today, Business Insider, The Austin American Statesman, The Dallas Morning News, and others spread the list like it was gospel and cited it in their reports. But none of these people considered Zimdar's political leanings or questioned her criteria or qualifications for determining which news sources should be included on her list. Now, there are plenty of fake news organizations that are out there which state that they are satire or fake news organizations. The Onion is completely is a satire news organization, but to claim many of conservative news organizations to be fake news because you don't agree with their views is completely disgusting. And the mainstream media, like it always does, will run fake stories and then never issue a retraction or apologize when they get it wrong, but then continue on like it was nothing, and then wonder why the American populace is turning away from the mainstream media, the established news organizations, because they cannot be trusted. They blow their credibility each and every single time, and does not try to even rectify it and act like we're stupid enough to believe all of the nonsense that's coming out of their mouth. I am so sick of it. So while the mainstream media will continue to lose relevancy as well as our news publications and just discredit themselves, I think this is a very cautious but great time for alternative media, because I think we've been given the opportunity to talk to the American people in a way that hasn't been happening in a very long time. We're able to tell the news to people, we're able to tell it accurately without all the filters, without being controlled by big corporations. because I think the one thing people are dying for is just accurate, truthful information. People don't like being lied to. And I think the one thing alternative media should do is hold our politicians as well as our government to account when the mainstream media won't do it. So I just wanted to share my opinions on this whole fake news trend that's going on, because it's upsetting to see people on the left and the right who aren't towing the basic establishment line that Republicans and Democrats are towing to be slandered like that. So I'm the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye.